Hey everybody, it's Tuesday and we are here covering Blink Chapter 5. So if you've been following along, thank you so much. If you are new to my book summaries, go back, start with the introduction. You've got a couple less than 10-minute each summaries for each chapter for Blink. I am a personal development junkie, and I know sometimes it's really hard to get it in, myself included, and so I thought this would be a really good way, one, to keep me accountable, but two, and more importantly, to keep this in front of you and give you those little tidbits and snapshots, whether or not you're reading the book along with me. So again, Blink is the book. We are on chapter 5. So if you're reading along, awesome. Give me a little emoji below. If you are listening, same thing on Audible, or you're listening pleasure. I don't know if there's anything else out there other than Audible. I'm all ears, let me know. But I love Audible as well because it's a great way to get the content when you can't sit down and physically read a book. Because let's be honest, sometimes I sit down and crack a book and my eyes closed. Doesn't matter the content, I'm just tired. We're all moving at 100 miles a minute, right? So we are talking about Kenna's dilemma. And so again, this book is about how sometimes we make snap judgments and they're either right or wrong if we stop thinking or continue to think. So Kenna's dilemma. So in this chapter, it starts off with an example. Kenna is a musician. And when Kenna is first heard, right? I've never heard of Kenna. Maybe you have. But when experts started to hear Kenna's music, they were falling at his feet. Falling at his feet. And what happened is what typically happens when a new product or musician or something goes to market. There's a lot of market research that's done. So in order for him to get on the radio, they had to play his music for a test panel. And nobody liked his music. Nobody. But here you've got people like Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit, and you've got Bono and everyone who backs up U2 falling at this guy's feet because his music is so amazing. But the general masses did not like his music. And so this chapter talks about why. Why is it that some snap judgments are can be perceived as so accurate and so spot on, but others are completely missed the mark. So what I liked about this chapter is it really takes into account how much non-experts in certain areas can be swayed by a package or a package deal. So one of the examples they talked about was the Pepsi Challenge. So if you're old enough to remember the Pepsi Challenge, it was a blind taste test where people just took a sip of either Pepsi or Coke and picked what they liked better. Now, I'm a Coke fan. Never did the Pepsi Challenge. But Coke didn't do well in the Pepsi Challenge, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but Pepsi's ratings dramatically went up after this Pepsi Challenge. And Coke freaked out, and they came up with a new formula that was sweeter, very similar to Pepsi, and it was called New Coke. And maybe you remember New Coke. But when New Coke went to market, it flopped. People flipped. So why did people flip? And this is all in the book. This is not due to my expertise. When people take a sip of something, right? So you think of a beverage like pop, soda. When you think of a beverage, you don't typically just take a sip and move on with your day. You drink a whole can, a whole glass, whatever. You don't take a sip. And what happens is that the take-home test is much more valuable than a sip test. Because you could take a sip of something and you're like, oh yeah, I like that. And it's funny, I like Coke better because it's not as sweet. Now, I don't drink a ton of pop, but if I'm going to pick something, it's going to be a Coke product. Because I'll take a sip of Pepsi, but I won't drink a can of Pepsi. It's too sweet. And so it was interesting that the sip test was not valid at all. But Coke put all their money and effort into New Coke because of the sip test results. So another example that kind of stuck out to me in this chapter. There's a lot of examples. This was a longer chapter. Good stuff. There was a test between two different brandies, two different brandies, and one brandy was significantly better. It was manufactured better, but the cheaper version was selling better, more cheaply made. And they couldn't figure out why. So there were a couple different tests, and we'll call them A and B. So A was supposed to be the better product, but B was selling better. So what they did is, first they do a blind taste test, and it was kind of mixed. Then so they figured out people couldn't tell the difference between the two. So why was one selling better than the other? So then they made them the same price point. And product B was still selling better, even though it was the same price point. So then it wasn't blind. Folks could see the brand and the bottle. People always picked B. And then they realized the bottle for brand A was very plain. The bottle for brand B was very ornate. It had foil on it. It was more decorative. So what did they do? They took product A and put it in product B's bottle. And guess what people preferred? The product that was in product B's bottle. This whole chapter talks about if we are not an expert in taste testing, and I'll get to that in a second, if we're not an expert in taste testing, we're fooled visually by marketing, by packaging. And there's this whole section in here about how it's folks' full-time jobs, and I'm sure you're not surprised, that test and market and try to better understand what a label needs to look like so people like you and me will buy their product. Back when margarine was coming out, initially, I think this was back in the 50s when it was first introduced, it flopped. It was white in color, which I didn't know that. It was white in color. People liked the yellow color of butter. So what did Imperial Margarine do? They tinted it yellow. They wrapped it in foil because foil was a sign of money. And then they put a crown on it. And what do you think happened? People started buying Imperial Margarine. There's a whole section in here about experts and food tasting experts and how they operate and how they're trained to best understand the differences between foods, right? So I know we're stuck on foods here for a second, but bear with me. They would be able to pick out Coke or Pepsi in the challenge. They would be able to pick out the difference between butter or margarine in a taste test, or the difference between two brandies. But let's go back to this musician. Experts like Bono or Fred Durst or all the people that were in the music industry that were just falling at Kenna's feet, they have that acquired taste. They have that acquired knowledge of what a musician and good music sounds like. But when it hits a test panel of people like you and me, now I put myself in that bucket. I am not a musical expert. I know what I like and I know what I like to listen to. It flopped because we're not experts. We couldn't see him. We couldn't touch him. He wasn't there for us to watch him perform. So when you think about people, right? So how does this relate to the real world? So you think about people. I would call myself a people expert. And when I think about my background and what I've done professionally, I've worked with a lot of different people and I've heard a lot of different stories and I've heard a lot of different situations. And pretty quickly I can tell right away if it's legitimate, if there's something that maybe I'm not hearing, if there's certain details that are being missed. I can pick up on that pretty quickly. Now, am I licensed or trained or anything like that? Absolutely not. But it just comes with time and it comes with that expertise that I'm just really good with working with people. But let's take something that I'm not an expert in, like coffee. So I have been in love with this. Well, there's two coffee shops, right? So there's one in northern Michigan and then there's one in the Metro Detroit area that I would go there every single day if I could, if it didn't totally break the bank. And I know exactly why. It's the aesthetics of the coffee shop. It's the absolute aesthetics. So I walk in And it just is, I can't even explain, it's just beautiful looking. You've got beautiful cups and you've got a beautiful setting and it's calm. And the people behind the counter are amazing and so nice at both places. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't do a taste test. I've never done it. Maybe I should do it. I've not done a taste test between coffee from these places or coffee from a Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's. I've never done that. And I don't know what I would pick. But what I do know is that in my mind, the coffee tastes better at these places. Now, I think there's some reasons why I think it really does taste better because they put a lot more into their process than maybe a commercial place, right? But it would be interesting to see what I determine, where it comes from. And so again, this whole chapter is around not only us making our snap judgments, but if we're not the expert, sometimes our snap judgments aren't correct. They aren't right. So, Blink, chapter 5. If you've not listened or picked it up, please do. This book is amazing. I love this book. This is some good stuff here. So I'm taking votes for my next book. So we've only got a couple more chapters. I think 2 more chapters. 1 more chapter. It's a long one. 1 more chapter, chapter 6. And then we've got the conclusion. So you've got 2 more videos from me on Blink. Hey, Courtney, thanks for joining. So you've got 2 more chapters from me on Blink. So we've got Friday and then next Tuesday. And then please comment below what book you'd like me to cover next. I'm thinking about Contagious Culture, which I've already started. Good stuff. Or You Are a Badass. So I'm sure you've heard of that one. Would love to cover that one and get some commentary going. So I hope you're having a great Tuesday night. Back at you on Friday. Again, please comment below. Chat with you soon. Bye.